Welcome to Heal with the Real, the podcast where real stories meet real healing. I'm your host, Amanda Haig, survivor, social entrepreneur, and founder of You Kind Therapy. Each episode, we dive into raw, honest conversations with people who've turned trauma into triumph. This is your safe space to feel seen, get inspired, and find hope because healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. So, my guest today, she's on a mission to help empower women and equip them with the tools and resources to help them realize their worth and believe in themselves during or after these horrific relationship experiences. Do you want to just say a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's Sam Knight and I'm an IDAS ambassador. IDAS is a charity in Harrogate that helps victims of domestic abuse and domestic violence. When I went through my domestic abuse experience, I reached out to them and they helped me so much that once I qualified as a positive psychology coach, I wanted to give back. So I went to them and then things escalated to ambassador level.
Amazing. So, can we go right back to early childhood, as early as you can remember? And what was it like growing up for you with your family? And yeah, a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my childhood was probably a bit unique, as in my dad was from India, and my mum had gone over in the 60s, 70s, and met him in India. So he was essentially an uneducated Indian man. And she brought him back to England to have me. Um, so he was abusive. He was violent towards her. And that went on for quite a lot of years until she finally left. I think I was about 6. Um, yeah, I mean, like I say, he was uneducated and not that there's any excuse for that type of behaviour ever, but it was, I think we lived in Harrogate, there wasn't any Asian men, he had no community, there was a lot of things that were going on with his mental health as well. Yeah, so my early childhood was really, I remember my mum and dad, well, my dad basically beating my mum up and, instances of me getting pulled out of the bath naked, just because my mum was fleeing from him, running down the street with me soaking wet. It was kind of, I was brought up with that kind of environment.
Wow. So, how do you think, as a 6-year-old, how how did that impact your life moving through childhood and through school? And did it impact you in a variety of different ways?
Yeah, and I think as well because I was an only child, so there was only me and my mum, and she never really met anybody else after that. Not like long term. Well, she did have partners, but not. She never married again, she'll say. Um, yeah, so I suppose it's you have an awareness that it's that men are potentially dangerous or not safe, or yeah, I went through my teenage years feeling different anyway, just partly because I was half Indian, I think, as well. Um, and recently, I mean, at that time, there was very little Asian people in Harrogate.
Yeah. And with you mentioning about your mum then that she didn't go back into any long-term relationships, do you think that's gone on to affect her a long way down the line? Because often, if you've been in an abusive relationship, it takes a lot to then begin trusting again. So, do you think that may have been the case for your mum, or was it something else?
Actually, yeah, I think I think there's can be a pattern of either people fall straight back into another domestic abuse relationship because it's familiar, or people just go complete avoidant and don't want to be around men at all. I would say, yeah. I mean, my mum did have partners, but as in committed, married, happily ever after. Yeah, she's in her 70s, and yeah, she's still single. So
Wow,
yeah.
wow. And so how did that affect you growing up through school and everything else when you don't have a father figure in your life?
Yeah, I suppose it's an odd one because he was always in touch, and my mum and him are still have got a good relationship. But he had an alcohol problem, still has. He's constantly either completely sober or completely alcoholic. So there's lots of different little angles on the situation. It's not just that he was a domestic abuser. Obviously, the alcohol exacerbated it, and he's always struggled with mental health and alcoholism. Um, yeah, I suppose I always knew I was different, and just being an only child as well, and watching my mum battle through, bringing me up on her own without financial support, emotional support. He lived in Brighton, I didn't ever see him. Um, yeah, so you just find a way, don't you, to be resilient as a child on your own.
Yeah. So when did you so tell me about like growing up through your teenage years and what that was like and what kind of things you got up to and how did you because I know that you ended up yourself in a and we'll get into that a bit later on. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your teenage years and growing up through then.
Well, I suppose potentially the fallout was that I hit the rebel. I didn't. I just went complete rebel mode. I started going out a lot, didn't go to school a lot. Was hanging around with lads who were a lot older than me who had cars, and yeah, much to my mum's disgust. Who's this person picking you up at 14? Um, so yeah, I suppose if you look at it in that respect, it did have an effect on me because I was seeking out things that I really shouldn't have been doing at 14, 15 years old. And I very quickly, well, I went to Ibiza when I was just turned 18. Um, so I've kind of gone from quiet, submissive child to here I am. Yeah, I was working in Ibiza at 18, and yeah, and then when I came back, I met my son's dad. Sorry, I just dropped something. I met my son's dad, and we were like first love. He was my first love. I was with him for 10 years. Um, but yeah, it
And
was.
do you think through that you were kind of looking for a father figure or
Um,
do you
yeah,
not?
potentially, yeah, because the lads that I was hanging around with were a lot older than me. Some of them were. I was 15, 16. Some of them were mid 20s. Um, yeah,
Okay. And so 10-year relationship, was that a good relationship?
yeah, we were together a long time. Yeah, we had Dylan, my son, and yeah, I mean, it had its ups and downs because it was young and volatile, but yeah, on the whole, it wasn't. Yeah, we were kind of splitting up, getting back together quite a lot, but
And I guess if you're in Ibiza, it's a party lifestyle and
oh
that.
no, I met him when I got back from Ibiza. I just
Oh,
did one.
okay.
Yeah, I did one season when I was 18, and then when I got back, more or less stepped off the plane and met him. So that that, and then I was pregnant at 21. So it's like life I just morphed into mum mode.
Okay. And how was that bringing up? So were you together? How
Like
old
eight,
was your son when you split up?
about 5, I think. Yeah, so I was with him from no, yeah, I was with him from about 18 to 27. So 10 years, I think it was.
Okay. And was that a mutual? Was that a good relationship or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were happy. We had, like I say, we had our ups and downs, but um, yeah, there was problems, but we were young, so it was just we were trying to navigate the life as two young parents. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. And so tell me how, navigating. So from age 5, I guess, when you split up, how was that navigating single mum life? Because it's hard, isn't it, when you're that young, trying
Yeah,
to bring up a child on your own.
yeah. So yeah, I was 21 when I had him. So yeah, and then that's really how I fell into the relationship with domestic abuser, because I'd split up with Dylan's dad and was heartbroken, and then within, it wasn't long, I'd say 5 6 months, I met um what should we call him? Should we give him a name or yes,
No, he doesn't deserve a name.
he doesn't deserve a name. I met perpetrator, we'll call him perpetrator.
Yeah.
Um yes, I met him, and he he was very charismatic. He had a pub, he was he had decent businesses, he had quite a lot of money, he had a place in Corfu, we had a place in Greece. You know, he was kind of swooped in me. I was a single parent, you know, struggling to bring up my young son, and he'd swept me off my feet. I met him down at his pub actually through a mutual friend. Yeah, and things very quickly escalated. You know, within like 3 weeks, I think we're more or less living together, and within, you know, your typical um, how it looks of love bombing.
How did that, so very quickly, that 3 weeks, what did that look like? Because it's a really important part, isn't it? The love bombing phase.
Yeah.
So just wanted to bring more awareness around that for other women and what that looked like.
Yeah, so really quickly we'd moved in together, and he basically we he'd taken us. So I think within a month he'd booked a holiday for me and my son to go to Greece. So we went over to Greece and spent a bit of time there. But I mean, there was red flags all over the place. He was going out drinking and just leaving me and Dylan at home, you know, in the apartment and things. But I kind of just didn't want to see it. But well, you know, I've I've never had this kind of level of adoration and somebody paying for a holiday for me and my son. It's not even his child, and yeah, it's. And then what did he get me? He got me. Then he presented me with an engagement ring within three
How
months.
quick was that?
3 months, and we had a big engagement party at the pub that he owned. You know, with all the people he knew and about three of my friends who were kind of like, "What's going on?" You get engaged to a man this quickly. Um, yeah, and then we kind of just had it was a bit of a dysfunctional life of going, oh no, so sorry, then I was working, but he encouraged me to leave my job and come work for him. So it was all these little, you know, like stripping me back, taking me away from the things that I had. Yeah, and moving me into his place with my son, and I was just vulnerable at that point. I'd come out, you know, my long-term relationship from being very young. Um, yeah, and I was looking for maybe something to match it, or to not replace it, you know, replace it, but you know, something to fill the void of that
Sure,
relationship.
sure. Tell me, because you mentioned about wanting to not recognize, although you recognize the red flags at the time, you kind of brush them away. Sometimes when you're in that relationship, there is those little red flags, those niggly things that you think, is that right or not? How can we spot them? Because sometimes we don't even spot them till we're out of the relationship. So how
Mm.
can we spot them a bit more? What would we look out for? Because you mentioned the love bombing, the early engagement, you've mentioned the um, taking you away on holiday really quickly, all those kind of things. Is there anything else that we can look out for?
Well, I think as well, it's having self-awareness. I think, you know, if you know yourself and you've got higher self-esteem from doing some work on yourself, you recognize it quicker. You're not walking into a situation with the need to feel loved and ignoring everything that's put in your path, because you know the need to be loved is more important than recognizing the red flags, as in, like you said, the well, it's the love bombing of the present, it's the isolation, the moving things too fast, people, and not really listening to what you want, and the perpetrators never listen to what opinions you want. They always find a way of pushing you further, or they'll push you up to the wire, like testing you as a test, see how
Yeah.
far they can get you. And then, they cause arguments, and then they reconcile, they come back in. It's like the cycle of abuse is, you can see them, and you don't want to upset them. So you start at one place, saying, no, I'm not comfortable with that. And then what they'll do is they'll have a fallout with you. And then you feel really bad about it. And then they come back and they reconcile by buying you a big gift, or, take you out for dinner. And then you fall back into the trap and the pattern and the cycle. And so it continues.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a really vicious cycle that you find yourself in because you're clinging on to those moments that, he's buying you things, he's giving you this adoration, all this love bombing, and you're then feeling, hang on a minute, one minute he's doing these lovely things, next minute he's doing something to cause upset in some way. And so you're kind of like, your mind just doesn't know whether it's real or not. So tell me a little bit further about how then it started to go a bit pear-shaped after that.
Well, I mean, there was a few things. Just going back to the kind of Greece situation, he it wasn't long. It was like 3 or 4 months. He got engaged, and then he'd moved us over to Corfu to live in a massive caravan on this piece of land. But he'd regularly go out drinking with his friends. I didn't have any friends. I was like, he'd go out drinking and just leave me and Dylan in this for days, and just leave me and Dylan in this caravan on our own, fending for ourselves on a wasteland in Greece. And he just didn't care. But at which point I was so far in, I was engaged. I was, we kind of built this whole story to my mum and to my friends, and how was I going to get out of it, and and there was just, little stories. Like I remember the Greece won the World Cup, and all I wanted, I didn't make many to honest, but I was kind of like, they've won the World Cup, surely we're going to have to go and watch some of the footage. And he was hungover and he just refused. And he was like, you go watch it, like laughing at me as if to say, if you can find a way to get there. It's just kind of like I wasn't allowed to do anything without his say so. So, he picked me up and dropped me off, and and then what happened after that? So those kind of situations kept happening, and more it happened, and more I thought, I'm not sure I want to be in this situation. I've still got my own house, and after about a year, they'd had a funeral at the pub. I thought somebody had died, and they'd had the wake at the pub. And I'd gone behind to get a drink, and I was talking to the barman about getting a drink, and he just turned around in front of the pub, in front of the whole funeral, and went, "You chatting up that barman?" I was like, "No, what are you talking about?"
Wow.
Then he started picking up sausage rolls and throwing them at me at a funeral in front of a wake. I was just like, at that point, after a year, I left. And we split up for about 3 months. I mean, he tried and tried. But then what he did was he just started seeing one of the barmaids, that was one of my friends, just to annoy me, So there was all those things that he'd do just to hook me back in. And after 3 months, I ended up getting back with him, by which point I was desperate to be back with him, because he'd met this barmaid and he looked all happy with her and she was taking my spot. And because it was all just a pantomime that he just made.
And so how did you feel after that? And was that kind of the realization that you needed to get out? Did you reach out to anybody? Because often when we're in those situations, it's the shame, the embarrassment, and we don't want to reach out.
Oh, well, he humiliated me in front of everybody. It wasn't, he had no qualms about it. He was, and then after that, when I'd gone back to my own house, I think he bought something like a washing machine, and he got one of his guys to come and remove the washing machine from the house, because if I wasn't having him, I wasn't having the washing machine either. It was like he did the typical, when you leave the perpetrator, you get tormented and punished. But to the point where he punished, because I was weak-minded at that point, he punished me so much that I thought, well, it's better to be back with him than to be going through this. Which
Yeah,
was what
and that's a typical thing, isn't it?
mm,
Because you feel, although you feel unsafe, it's what
mm,
you know, and I guess he's taken you away from your own home, your
mm,
friends, and it's hard, isn't it? I think to admit actually this is failed or sometimes even unsafe. So
yeah.
how did what happened next, and how did you continue the relationship?
Yeah, so that was when we got back together. Things I quickly realised, so long as I danced his tune and kept my mouth shut, did as I was told, I was going to be gifted with an amazing life. Which, on paper, yes, I was. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, I suppose, about the stigma attached to people who go through domestic abuse. That it's not just people who are a certain type. On paper, I look like I had it all. We were living in big houses. We had an indoor swimming pool. I had a Range Rover with my name on it. The children were in private school. Yeah, we had 5 holidays a year. We had a booming business. So everything was on the surface, tickety boo. Who would guess?
Yeah,
And that went on for many years actually, because I just kept my mouth shut. My friends would invite me for some of my best friends, my childhood friends would invite me for like the hen do's and stuff like that. And I just used to say to them, I can't go, I can't go. There's no point in you sending me an invite. I'm not allowed to go. It wasn't you. But people just got used to it. And that was the travesty really, is everybody just got used to it. Oh, Sam can't come on this night out. Sam can't come on our hen do. Yeah, it's terrible, really, that you can get to the point where other people are accepting it. Your friends and your family are accepting it. Nobody was actually saying. In fact, sometimes the attitude was, if I was whinging and moaning about the fact that I couldn't do anything or go anywhere, I'd get the but she's such a princess. What more does she want? What, she wants some freedom on top of
or
everything
oh
else.
no, not that again.
Yeah.
So what point were you, okay, I've had enough, I need to get out, or did you reach out to anybody specifically?
Well, it started building probably after my second daughter was born. Um, he 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 started because I was more closed down. Obviously, I'm breastfeeding, looking after 3 kids at that point.
Yeah.
So I wasn't as available to him. He started sleeping on the sofa, and he was going down and going to the sports club, and there was just things that were going on. Hear him having conversations with women and things like that. I don't know what was going on really. So I was kind of starting to think, well, I'm going to start kicking back and having my own life and going out and seeing my friends. And I wanted to start doing some beauty. I was trained beauty therapist before I met him. I wanted to do some beauty therapy bits. So yeah, but he didn't like that. He didn't want me breaking away. There was a couple of occasions. I remember we went to Ibiza on a family holiday, and he got really drunk and basically started threatening me to the point where my son had to come in, and there was a point where I thought we're going to have like a full fight with my son and my husband, and the kids are there crying on the bed, and it was just when perpetrators get out of control, they escalate. I've never seen that side of him because I've never pushed him that far. But once I started having a voice of my own, that's when and having opinions about things and wanting to do something and be somebody, my own identity. That's when he started kicking back and tried to close me down more. Yes, it got to the point where, well, there was lots of occasions over about a year where he'd do things like he'd say that he was going to go to Greece. I mean, in time when you used to print off your boarding card, I mean, some people still do, you have it on your phone now. but he'd book a full flight, and then he'd get the boarding card and he'd just put it on the mantelpiece to prove that he was going away. And one Christmas Eve, he went and got drunk and just didn't come home and left me to wake up with all the kids on my own. Whereas Daddy, he'd do stuff like that, but just to torture me. I'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Daddy's not here. It's Christmas morning, but So it was
Yeah.
those, and I think that was the last Christmas actually before we split up. There was those types of things that he'd do to just mentally abuse me. It was all mental abuse. That's the
So no physical, but just
No physical abuse. It was all mental abuse. It was kind of like, if you push it too far, this is what I'll do. If you do 2, I'll do 10. It was always like that. But the problem with that is there's only so many times you can do it before somebody loses interest. It's not. It doesn't hurt as much as the first time. The first time I was distraught by the last Christmas that he just didn't turn up on Christmas morning. Yeah, it was. And
but the thing is, it's not hurting it, like you say, it doesn't hurt you as much, but it's the children, that are waiting for daddy. And there's many times where my ex perpetrator would say he's going out and never come back for the whole weekend and be left with the baby. So yeah, I get that.
yeah,
When did you say enough's enough? I need to get out.
well, it just was rumbling on, and he was doing things like he removed me from the family business as a director, so I had no rights to it. And I'd gone out this one particular night, and he was acting really odd for him. He was kind of like, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure, probably just round a few bars in town." "Oh, right, okay. And who are you going with? What are you wearing?" It's like, "You've never shown this much interest in me going out. You've never been nice about me going out." And then he was like, "Oh, well, I hope you have a really nice night." But I thought at the time he's being sinister. Something not right here. He's never ever said have a nice night. Um, so I just went about my business and went out, and he he got he hired private investigators to follow me around um, all night, and it was such a weird experience because looking back, I kind of knew that there was these people that were there. I'm quite intuitive, I'd say, but I can remember somebody holding a door open for me as I walked through, and I thought, I've just seen them in that other bar. And then towards the end of the night, we were in Vipers, so we were in a nightclub, and we'd managed to get into the VIP bit, and they'd obviously not managed to get in. But there was like floor to ceiling windows, but they were right next to the toilet. Nobody would stand there. There was no reason for anybody to. Why would you stand there when there's a whole club? Two 40-year-old men stood by a floor to ceiling window by a toilet, and they kept looking over the shoulder. I mean, I was drunk, but even then, I remember thinking, "Sure, it's those guys again." Um, anyway, so we just left there, me and my friend, and we went up to McDonald's, which you do to get a Mackey's. And my phone started, and I picked it up, and it was him. And I said hi, and he was screaming down the phone at me. Sent me through all the videos, saying that I'd been talking to men and that he had video evidence, da da da. I was like, right, I'm just gonna have to go and stay at my mum's because I was gonna go back home. Went to my mum's, and he had a Fitbit on, and he started ringing. I took it off. I was drunk. I thought, I can't be doing with that buzzing all night. I might rest. Woke up in the morning with 52 missed calls, and I don't know how many threatening voice notes and text messages. And he basically just rung it every 10 minutes for about 4 hours whilst I was asleep. And then I was scared, you see, then because I know not to push him. Then I was scared. So the first thing I did at 8 o'clock in the morning, I didn't even get up and go to the toilet or anything. I rang the police straight away. I was worried what he was capable of. Yeah, and the police basically got me and took me down to the house, and I gathered up some toys and some uniform and stuff for the kids. But yeah, he locked us out of the house for a month.
So you were living with him, but didn't go back. Let's go back a little bit because I think this is the most dangerous point. So you leaving the home, but actually this point, and where you're not with him anymore and he's lost the control
Yeah.
is the most dangerous point. And a lot of people think, okay, we've escaped. She'll be all
Mm.
right now. She's away from the abuser, but
Yeah.
actually there's so much more to come. And it is one of the most dangerous parts of leaving your abuser or perpetrator. So tell us about that because it is really frightening.
Yeah, well, of course they ramp up, don't they? And they try everything. So he, at that point, he locks me out of the house. Um, he hated my cats, so we actually thought he was going to kill them. In fact, no, he messaged me and said he was going to kill my cats. So my son had like an annex outside that he lived in. He took the cats into the annex to look after them, so it was just he was trying everything, but all of my stuff, all of the kids' stuff, I'm talking like every bit of clothing that they had in bin bags, all our family photos, all like cut up, um, all in my mum's hallway. Then because that didn't get the effect that he wanted, he then tried. He didn't try to kill himself. He threatened to kill himself. Um, but it was all just part of the same game. He was just wanting the attention. So when that happened, he was taken down to the Briery and sectioned. At which point he rang me and went, I'm not that bad, I'm not like these lot." He said, "You need to get me out of here." I was like, "You're the person who tried to kill yourself, Joe." So yeah, he tried everything because one of the things that perpetrators do, they can't have you. They will they they will sometimes try to kill themselves or kill themselves, so you have to live with the guilt forever.
And the animals as well, the
Yeah.
poor animals, anything that they can do to hurt
Mm.
you in any way, they will do, won't they? And
Yeah.
obviously animals, they're always on the list if they've got something, some weapon
Mm.
that they can
Yeah.
upset you or hurt you in any way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the thing. And then, because then we had all the mental health crisis team come around when we got out of the Briery unit, and I didn't want to see any harm come to him. That I'm not that nature. I'm an empath. I'm not a. So I would go and sit with him in the mental health crisis team, and I could see them looking at me as if to say, "This man isn't for real. This is just a game." So because they were asking him questions, and of course he wasn't right answering them in the right way, and there was a lot of blame game going on to me, and yeah, it was just. And another thing that he did was he then threatened that he'd burnt all my stuff. So he got a load of paperwork from our office and set a big fire in the garden and rang me and said, "I've burnt all your stuff." So when I arrived, there's a fire going off in our garden. And I went inside, all of the cupboards were clear, down to my jewellery, abuse therapy stuff, all of my clothes, everything had gone. Um, because it was all mental abuse. It was all emotional mental abuse. So for 6 hours of my life, I thought all of my worldly possessions had been burned. And then he said, "No, I've got them all in the back of my car." I just wanted to make you think that that happened.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was just ongoing. I was actually writing some lists about all the stuff that happened. I thought, it's when you talk about it, you can't believe you went through all this.
It's the gaslighting as well, isn't it? That, you mentioned the blame of when you were in the mental health Briary wing,
Mm.
that blame that they're then putting onto you. Well, it was your fault that I acted in this way or did this.
Yeah. One of his favourites was, "I only drink because I have to live with you." I was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, he'd be vile to me. He'd say things like, I remember being 8 months pregnant with my daughter, with my second daughter, and it was a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. Um, so he wasn't even drunk at this point. And I'd come down in the morning, waddled down, and he was asleep on the sofa. He went, "Look at the state of you." I said, "What?" He said, "Nobody's going to want you now, are they?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm married to you." He said, "Well, all your bits are going to be knackered." He said, You're going to be fat and like that forever." I was like, wow. I remember going upstairs and like closing the bedroom door and just crying and thinking, I can't believe that's how my husband speaks to me at
Yeah.
9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I've done nothing wrong. I've skipped down the stairs to make some breakfast.
And that's a classic. That is a classic of them saying nobody else will want you.
Mm,
And then you've got that fear or that you lose your confidence because
yeah.
you start to believe actually nobody else will want me.
Mm,
So that is just a classic
yeah. Yes.
narcissistic behavior.
Especially heavily pregnant as well. I mean, you couldn't be much crueler, could you?
No,
When you're
no.
heavily pregnant with his child. Um,
So where are you now and how did you, has it stopped?
well, I mean, it went on for years, didn't it? Because I was in court for 4 years fighting for the kids. He's got no access to the children. He's not got any access because we went through court for years. It's cost me £40,000 just to save them because he was trying to take them to Thailand. And basically, my lawyer said if he gets their children to Thailand, you never see them again. So I had to fight and fight for their little lives. I had to stand in court against, he paid 10 grand for barristers, coming up from London, best family barristers in the country to fight me.
Wow.
But in the end, you know, justice system came through. I had a really gritty Kafkas officer who dealt with some really bad cases in Leeds and Bradford and things. And she saw it. She was like, there was no mamby-pamby around her. Um, she wrote this belter of a report and basically said you need to go in domestic abusers program on the perpetrators rehabilitation program, which I think is about a 9 month program. But it's a program where you can't just go, I want to come on this because I want to see my kids. You have to have an acknowledgement that you have a problem. So almost being like an alcoholic and say, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't treat this woman like this. I shouldn't be treating my children like this. I've clearly got some sort of issue around control and abuse. But he couldn't. I mean, he couldn't even get past the stage of saying, okay, I'll look at the program. He just went, there's nothing wrong with me. It's all her. And sod that, I'll see the kids when they're older after we spent 4 years in court. I remember the day that sorry, I was going to say, I remember the day she rang me up and she went, so this is bittersweet, Sam. She said, you're never going to have to deal with a man again. She said, but you've got to look at those two little girls and tell them. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was bad. It was a bad time.
And tell me about court because like you said, you've then got this expense of 40 grand in court
Yeah,
costs.
yeah,
How do you, I know people or survivors that have absolutely lost their houses because they've
yeah,
had to pay for all these court costs that just some women can't even afford because they may be going through economic abuse. What was that like? Because that must have been terrible for you.
yeah. Well, I suppose initially it's back to the same thing. He refused to sell the house, so the house nearly got repossessed. He'd be awkward. People would come in and say put offers in, and he'd say no. And of course, he needed both of us to say yes. So he'd rather me have nothing. He would have taken nothing out of that situation just so I had nothing. Fortunately, it got sold right at the wire. But and my solicitors were really good. They knew that it was going to, come to the point where it was going to sell. So I did self-represent quite a bit because it's all so many court cases, so many hearings. It just went on and on. But then I could pay for some of it towards the end, I think. But yeah, no, it was hard work and self-representation. I mean, that was one of the hardest things that I had to go through was I got cross-examined for 3.5 hours in the witness stand, and by his barrister that he paid £10,000 for. And of course, you can't. It was family court. We couldn't have anybody else there, so it was just me and my legal team, and him and his legal team. It's not like I could have my mum there or a friend there or anybody to support me. I mean, in that respect, I think things do need to change in the
I
justice
think,
system.
yeah, I think it's like it's changed now where you can bring a reporter in, can't you?
I don't know. It's been a lot of years. So.
Yeah, so it is changing, but it's still,
Mm,
it's the costs of court alone and the stress of
yeah.
those 4 years, I imagine, for you.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, it just. Well, the thing is, when you're living it, there is nothing else. So that's all you talk about. So for that period of time, that's the topic of conversation with everybody. Oh, what's going on with court? What's going on with the kids? What's going on with solicitor? where are you living now? And I remember when it all stopped, when finally the court case was over and he had no access of the children, which was like the biggest thing, all right, bring those girls up on my own with no financial support whatsoever, but they're safe, they're with me and
Yeah.
they're safe. But when it finished and when it was over, nobody talks to you about that bit. You obviously feel a massive relief, but there's a massive void. That is your identity. That is your life. That's all you've done. Since you've left him, that's just been the drama and the soap opera of your life or my life. It's that's all I knew. That's all I spoke about day in, day out to everybody.
Yeah.
And for that
Yeah.
to just go like that, I was like, well, now what? Now what do I talk about?
And what did happen after that? Because you're right, like you've just been so consumed by this perpetrator and the court case and everything else.
Mm.
How do you fill that void? And what would you say for any other survivors that are going through that?
Well, the thing is, there is always hope, and that's sharing my experience. That's what really gave me some value to all the awfulness that had happened. But I think that there needs to be, and this is where I'd ask come in actually, because they're brilliant at, what would you say, not aftercare, what's it called? You mentioned the other day
So
like,
recovery, prevention and
yeah,
recovery.
like peer groups after
Okay. Yeah.
peer groups and things that you can attend. Um, because that's your most vulnerable point. Sometimes your most vulnerable point isn't when you're actually going through it, because then you're in survival mode or survivor mode. It's you've got this inner strength that you've left, and you've got people helping. And the point where it's the hardest is when you come out of it and there's nothing,
Yeah.
and you're fighting, you're swimming to find out who you are and where your identity lies, and what's next, and what you're going to fill the void of the drama with. And I mean, some people are, still battling with the perpetrators because of co-parenting, or and it's finding a way to navigate all of that. It's probably, I think that bit was as hard as the battle,
Yeah.
and because you're so vulnerable, and that's the point where another perpetrator can come in and swoop in.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're constantly in that fight or flight mode, and then all
Mm,
of a sudden it's okay, I've got breathing space, but who am I and what is
mm,
my purpose again?
yeah.
So how do you really rebuild your life, and what would you say to other survivors as tips or things that you used to fill that void and move forward?
Well, I really threw myself into self-development. That's what I think really saved me from, I don't know, at that point I could have gone two ways. I could have ended up drinking too much and being, going down one road. I could have gone into full victimhood, or I could have gone into Rise of the Phoenix mode. There's
Yeah.
two paths. And I just wasn't going to go down that road. I knew I I retrained as a coach, so I got a diploma in positive psychology, and once I got that, I really wanted to give back to IDAS because they helped me in my darkest days. It's that the services they provide are just amazing. You can get, not only have they got the refuge, but you've also got they've got counselling services. They ring you to check in and make sure that you're okay. They can provide food vouchers if you're struggling to feed yourself and your children. It's just, they can put ring doorbells in if you're worried, and window locks on, and they're just an amazing charity, and that's why I do what I do for them.
It's amazing that you had that support, and I know they do a wonderful job, do IDAS, and the CAO who I've met is a really lovely lady.
Yeah,
But we talk about the ring doorbells because how important are they? That was the only way that I stopped my perpetrator from coming to my house. Not through a ring doorbell, but I had to get CCTV fitted into the house.
yeah.
Tell me about, because this is so important, because every time I rang the police would turn up and say, well, have you got proof? Have you got proof? And I didn't. I had no proof. So there was absolutely nothing they could do.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think one of the important things that actually the police did say to me is keep a diary. keep it, we've all got notes on our mobiles, is just log every incident, everything that happens, even if you think it's minuscule. Make sure that you put everything down. I mean, I've recently only had to go back to the police before Christmas because abusers never stop abusing. They still find a way. He's still trying to find a way. He's still contacting people and do third party. But because I know how this works, is don't ever think that anything's too small to not report.
Yeah.
I went into the police station. He pulled up my background and he was like, "You did the right thing. Looking at everything that's gone on. Yes, it might have only been a threat through a third person, but you never know. You just never know. You're dealing with abusers. You never know. It's 9 years since I've been going through this, and
Yeah.
I'm still wary. I've still got a ring doorbell. He's like, you just have to. I always used to say it's like walking around with a target on your back, that never feels like it never goes. Still feel like I've got a target on my back.
How do you gain your confidence again? How do you get to that point where you feel that you are good enough and it because your self-worth goes, you feel like you're the lowest of the low, and all the things that they constantly say to you. How do you get your confidence back? What ways did you do that?
I threw myself into regaining me, finding out who I was. Because you come out and you strip back, you don't know who you are. You don't know what your likes are, your dislikes are, because you've just been agreeable for so long. Because it's scary or dangerous to not be agreeable. So to find yourself again, it takes a lot of work. You've got to be doing the self-development work of journaling or looking at your exercise and nutrition, not trying to get involved in drinking and partying too much, although, that's the easy option, want to escape it. And that was my first go-to. Let me escape this hell just by, getting blasted a lot. But in the long term, it just doesn't work. There's got
Yeah.
to be more, and that's the stage that I got to, is that, I went down the coaching route, went down the self-development route, went down regaining, finding who I was.
Yeah. And you're right, you put on this plaster, don't you, of okay, I can get drunk or I can do whatever. And then you have to take that plaster off and actually really dig deep inside and how can
Yeah,
I really work within myself and start to love myself again.
yeah.
Do you have a daily routine that you do or any tips that we can
Oh, I
give
do,
to any
Amanda.
listeners?
Oh, I do. I'm such a witch. I've got a few crystals. Look.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, I mean, I try and sleep well. Try and get 8 hours a night. I go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week. If I'm over enthusiastic, more. But I try not to beat myself up because that's sometimes you get into a routine of being perfectionism, and if I don't do it, then there's no point in doing any of it. And it's finding a balance. It's a good old balance word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can party as well as the rest of them, but I'm also I can be very balanced and level and together and Mary Poppins, I call her. So I get up and I meditate daily, I journal daily, even if it's just a couple of paragraphs about where I wanted to go and where I see my future, and I do gratitude lists on the daily. Uh,
Nice.
vision boards. It's all the tools and resources that we're taught that will help, and they do. That's the thing, they do, because it gives you some focus and some purpose and light that you sometimes can't see with all the muddle that's in your head. Whereas if it's put down on paper, or it's put on a vision board, or you spend some time actually doing the processes, then yeah, it's there. It's more ingrained.
Yeah, and you're right. Like for me, I started journaling on beginning my healing journey, and my journaling ended up becoming my book. And what it allowed me to do was get all this out of my head and make sense of it. But
Yeah.
like right from my childhood, right up to, now, okay, this is why this may have led me to be an empath, because I know you mentioned that you were an empath.
Mm.
Um, just for the listeners, what is an empath?
An empath is somebody who wants the best for other people, who how would you word it? Would it
I
be
would say it would be to understand from if somebody's maybe in a not in a good place, you feel their pain.
yeah,
You
yes,
really feel where they are, you try and understand it from their point of view.
yeah, because sympathetic and empathetic, isn't there? And
Yeah,
sympathetic is agreeing with somebody, whereas the empathetic is feeling somebody's feelings.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and that's another reason why I do what I do. I mean, I was going into the refuges, but I actually found that a bit too much for me. Being girls or women that were freshly walking out of their homes with, you know, just some Asda bags and the kids. It was
yeah,
just I was taking it home at night. It was just too much for
yeah,
me as an
yeah,
empath to actually deal with. But
yeah,
so
yeah.
but that's the thing. It's kind of knowing your boundaries as well. Now the other things that are really hard as you come out of these relationships is understanding what's what's right for you. You know.
And what's a healthy relationship look
Mhm.
like? That's so important. And boundary setting. And, you know, I've been in quite a few relationships since, but I've known that the values aren't aligning or something is not
Mhm.
right within the relationship. And sometimes I question myself. I don't know about you, but I question, am I just being too much with my boundaries sometimes? Because I
Yeah,
think when you've been in such unhealthy relationships and then you find a healthy one,
you
it
don't know how
doesn't
to
feel
behave.
right. So how do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, oh, it's a minefield, isn't it? How do we behave?
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to give too much, but I don't want to not give anything at all. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It takes time, doesn't it? And it takes a long time. And some people never come out of it, like my mum. That's the thing.
yeah,
Some people are closed down forever because it's easier. I always say my cold black heart, but I don't want to have a cold black heart forever because you just don't. But it is hard. It's hard navigating it, either falling back into the same routine, the same pattern, the same perpetrator abusive relationship because it's familiar and comfortable, or just thinking this isn't worth it. I've been through too much, and I'd rather just keep my boundaries high.
yeah,
Keep
yeah,
myself to myself. It's just
yeah,
like there's only the two, isn't there? Really, it's
yeah.
well, there isn't. There is a middle ground, but I haven't found that.
And it's hard, like like you say, you've got this black heart and you're not willing to open it
Yeah,
until you find that right person. And then I think you're looking for too much of a perfect person sometimes,
yeah,
and then you don't
yeah,
end up finding that. It is hard. It's so hard to navigate. Where
yeah.
are you now then with your everything?
So yeah, I'm still doing lots of bits and pieces for IDAS. I've got a podcast with them next week. I've got a meeting with the CEO at some point that I've got to actually arrange. My ADHD, I'm in the diagnosis for ADHD, so I ping about all over the place. I've just done a couple of interviews with Greatest Hits Radio last week that was aired.
Where can
Um,
listeners listen to that? Can they listen to that replay or not?
No, but I'm, in fact, yeah, on my Instagram handle. So I've just rejigging and rebranding on my Instagram. So it's her underscore healing underscore compass. And in the next week, so months, let's say, I'm going to be offering one-to-one
Yay.
healing and rebuilding sessions, working around people finding themselves again, really, finding the identities that's lost whilst you're in the relationship. And hopefully looking at doing some empowering women's sessions, just finding some spaces and hopefully doing some work with you if
I love
the event
that.
stuff comes up.
I love that. Well, do you know what, Sam? Thank you so much for being
You're
a
welcome.
guest today.
I've
I
enjoyed it. Thank
really,
you.
I just appreciate all your honesty and your openness, and I know that you're going to go on to do fantastic things. I'm sure of
Ah,
it. And
amazing. Thank you, Anna.
yeah, no, thank you so much.
No,
Yeah, and so we can reach out to you on healing underscore
Her
compass
healing, her healing compass. So yeah, I think he's got a little underscore in between each one. But if you
and
put, there
Sam
isn't
Knight.
any Sam Knight, yeah, or her healing compass on Instagram,
Perfect.
and I've got a few bits and pieces on there. You can book a one-to-one session through that as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so
Okay,
much. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
thanks, Amanda. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Heal with the Real. I hope today's episode offered you insight, hope, or simply reminded you that you're not alone on this journey. If there was anything that we talked about that has affected you, please know that support is available or reach out to somebody. You'll find helpful links in the show notes, including contact details for IDAS, which is a specialist domestic abuse service that we mentioned today. Until next time, stay kind to yourself and remember, healing starts with one brave step. Thank you.